I thank the Lord for directing us as we were looking for a replacement car for the one that we had that was wearing out. And I had the idea of just all the research and going from, all these different car places looking. And so I asked the Lord, just direct us. I know, I mean, it's not a big thing, but first place we went, someplace we bought our last car, and we looked at, we had an Equinox. We all liked Equinox. We looked at that, but he had a different car there that suddenly attracted us, and I thought, and we looked at it, drove it, and really liked it. I thought, we can't just buy the first car we see. And so I told Wendy, the owner, I said, we're just going to look around because I just can't get the first. And we looked around, we went one more place, and so, we really like that car. And I remember I prayed as we were driving. I said, Lord, if this is the right car, just help me to know. And we went back and got it. So it's a Toyota RAV4, has 136,000 miles on it, which normally wouldn't be too good, but everybody's saying it's just broken in with a Toyota. So, yes, it's not red like all of our other cars have been. So anyway, so I thank the Lord for just helping out some poor ignorant people who don't know what they're doing when they're looking for a car. Yeah. All right, we're in chapter 12 of the Gospel of Luke. Turn there, please. Chapter 12. That's a wonderful chapter for giving us instruction on how to live, how to trust in God, the importance of trusting in God. It almost seems as though we ought to read the entire chapter and then go back to chapter 11 and read that too. And but we can't take that kind of time. We're going to begin with verse 35 today, which comes after Jesus has instructed his disciples about not worrying and trusting in God. And if you want to go back and read all that, let's see, starting with verse 22 and following, you should do that if you're not familiar with that. And then we go on to verse 35. Maybe we just read a couple verses before that. Verse, oh boy, I'm going to keep going back and back. 31. Let's start with 31. Seek his kingdom, and these things will be added to you. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has chosen gladly to give you the kingdom. So what are you worried about? He's giving you the kingdom. So don't worry about the other stuff. Don't sweat the small stuff, right? Sell your possessions and give to charity. Make yourselves money belts which do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven where no thief comes near nor moth destroys. And we talked about that doesn't mean that we're all to go out and sell everything we have, because then none of us would have anything, and it would be chaos. So we'd all be dependent on the government, I suppose. I don't know. That's not what he had in mind, but that we should feel free to give away what we have, to give away things so that other people may be helped, and that God will supply what we need. 34, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And then the verse 35, then we are going to continue with instruction that he is giving us about being faithful in our stewardship. We've talked about stewardship here, that of realizing that what we own, we don't own, God owns. We're just stewards of it, and we are to think of our possessions that way. And so in verses 35 to 48, he is going to address being faithful in our stewardship. And that begins with verses 35 and 36, in which he tells us about waiting, gives us instruction about waiting, in which he says, be dressed in readiness and keep your lamps lit, or keep your lamps burning. This translation says, be dressed ready for service. Literally, this be dressed is let your loins be girded. Well, that's not something we use today, and it's maybe an obscure idea. But back in biblical times, when men wore long robes as an outer garment, it was difficult to run or to engage in the activities of work or warfare, so that in order to do that, men would take their long robes and, as the picture showed you here, tie it up around themselves, bring it up through between their legs and tie it around, use a belt type of thing to gird it. And that's what girding your loins meant. It meant basically getting yourself ready for action. All right, you're probably familiar with that. Any questions about that particular expression and why Jesus uses it here? It says, be ready. And then he says, keep your lamps lit. And the idea is keep on keeping them lit. They're already burning and continuously burning. So both admonitions are communicating the same thing, and that is stay dressed for action and keep your lamps burning. Keeping your lamps burning, keep the lights on. Be ready would be how we would say it today. Verse 36, be like men who are waiting for their master when he returns from the wedding feast, so that they may immediately open the door to him when he comes and knocks. So be like men. Of course, he's talking to men about men who would be slaves or servants who are waiting for their master. So they're waiting for when he returns from the wedding feast. He returns is a very common Greek verb, but it's only used twice in the New Testament, here and in Philippians 1:23. The verb means originally to unloose, and so it's used of vessels, of ships, to unloose their moorings and go to sea, or simply of departing. Generally, you loose yourself from where you are and you go back home. And so the idea here is this master is at a wedding feast, and when he looses himself from that engagement, being that he will return home. And then when he does that, that they would be ready, because their garments are tucked up, they're ready for action, their lamps are lit, they're ready. They don't have to go around doing it. They're ready for when he comes home, and they're able to come and immediately open the door to him when he comes and knocks. So he doesn't have to stand there knocking. Have you ever had that experience where you're maybe at your own house, you forgot your key, whatever, you're knocking, ringing the doorbell, nobody's coming? I've had that experience here. This doorbell doesn't work. You realize that? Oh, all right. Because 9 out of times I've been here, that bell has not worked. Good. So I usually have to call them on the phone. But you can imagine if you're the master of a house and you come home and nobody's there. Now, maybe you've been away on a trip and you come home and you expect your wife and kids to come greet you at the door, but you come in or maybe it's locked and you can't get in. Nobody seems to care. Well, Jesus says, be like slaves who care about their master coming back, and be ready. The dog always cares. Yeah. Someone has written this: when the master is away, the women and children eat, then the servants, then a portion is set aside for the master's return. At bedtime, the women and children go to sleep, but the servants must keep awake and be ready to serve their master when he gets back. It is a disgrace for the master of a house to wait on himself or be locked out. Shrewd servants would sneak in some shut-eye during doing their best to calculate the time of his return. Faithful servants would never sleep. No matter when he would return, they would be on the watch, even at intervals going to the door, looking outside and seeing if he's coming. And the idea that the reason why Jesus mentions the wedding feast is because other kinds of engagements, a person would probably have a pretty good idea when they're returning. If they're going on a business trip, I know I'm coming back a certain day. But a wedding feast, you wouldn't necessarily know when it's going to end. It could go on for days. And, it's whenever the master would decide it's time to go home, or when the feast finally breaks up, when he would go home, but they wouldn't know when that would be. So that's why Jesus puts it in those kind of terms. All right. Any comments or questions about these couple of verses? John Calvin says about this, now though the Son of God has departed to the blessed rest of heaven and is absent from us, yet as he has assigned to everyone his duty, it would be improper for us to give way to indolent repose. That's the only reason I put that on there, because those last two words struck me as being really poetic. It would be improper for us to give way to indolent repose. Let that sink in. And of course, Jesus is telling, excuse me, this to his disciples because he's been telling them that he's going away for quite some time. He's going to die, and he's going to come back to life. Now, whether he's referring to that or whether he's referring to his coming, I'm not sure that I can say for certain. But he is talking to his disciples and is telling them, look, you need to be ready for when I come back, whether it's from the dead or whether it's in the future. All right, so look on to verses 37 to 40, in which Jesus addresses watching. Verses 37 to 38 is the celebration. Blessed are those slaves whom the master will find on the alert when he comes. So just referring to the previous thought. Truly I say to you, how happy will the master be when he comes back and finds his slaves on the alert? The lamps are burning, they're ready to go. How happy will he be? He says, truly I say to you that he will gird himself to serve and have them recline at the table, and will come up and wait on them. So the master is going to become like a servant. He'll be so happy at how his slaves have been prepared for him that he will actually come in and serve them. Now, that's pretty remarkable, isn't it? And of course, Jesus is referring to himself, that he will be the servant of those who are his servants. And then he goes on to express the kind of circumstance, whether he comes in the second watch or even in the third, and finds them so. Blessed are those slaves. Now, the second watch, third watch refers to the kind of timekeeping that both the Jews and the Romans had. The Romans had 4 watches, the Jews had 3, and I think he's using the Roman perspective here. He's writing to Gentiles. The second watch would be from 9 p.m. until midnight. The third watch would be from midnight to 3 a.m. And so no matter what time of night, he comes back in the middle of the night, as we would say. And he finds his servants in readiness. Then blessed are those slaves. Comments? John Trapp, Baptist pastor, said this, for sooner or later, death will be upon us. Neither is it sure that he will knock or give warning. Watch therefore, since at the next puff of breath, thou mayest blow away thy life. We don't know whether we'll be here when Christ returns. If you're looking forward to him coming back, still death might interrupt that for any of us, as it has for many over the years. And so we're to be ready always. Okay, next we come to a caution in verses 39 and 40, where Jesus says, "Be sure of this, that if the head of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have allowed his house to be broken into." So Jesus moves from describing himself as a returning master to that of a thief. Now, he's not saying he is a thief. He's just using this as a way of comparison, that if people knew when a thief was coming, they would be ready. And so in the same way, you don't know when your master's coming, so be ready. That's all it's intended here. Verse 40, you too be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect. He's coming at an hour you do not expect. A visitor to an elementary school told the children that upon his return, he would give a prize to the student who had their desk in best order. "When will you return?" they asked. He said, "I cannot tell you." A little girl who was known for keeping a messy desk said she meant to win the prize. "You," her schoolmates jeered, "your desk is always out of order." "Oh, but I will clean at the beginning of every week." "But what if he comes back at the end of the week?" "Then I will keep it clean every morning." "But he may come at the end of the day." She thought and she said, "I know what I'll do. I'll just keep it clean." And that's our exhortation. Jesus says, be ready, keep it clean, be ready for him to come back. During his 1960 presidential campaign, John F. Kennedy often closed his speeches with the story of Colonel Davenport, the Speaker of the Connecticut House of Representatives. One day in 1789, the sky of Hartford darkened ominously, and some of the representatives, glancing out the windows, feared the end was at hand. Quelling a clamor for immediate adjournment, Davenport rose and said, "The day of judgment is either approaching or it is not. If it is not, there is no cause for adjournment. If it is, I choose to be found doing my duty. Therefore, I wish that candles be brought." Well, rather than fearing what is to come, we are simply to be faithful till Christ returns. Instead of fearing the dark, we are to be lights as we watch and wait. So Jesus says to all of us at all time to be ready, to be doing what we need to be doing, what we should be doing, to be engaged in the duties which Christ has given to us. All right, comments, questions?
Bring them all back to him. He sustains them, he takes care of them, he protects them, and be ready. And I think maybe in some ways this is talking about the last section. In windows, at least are in there.
Mm-hmm.
He will be the one who will wait on them. He will be the one who is ready, and he's the one who will protect them for him. So it's like a two-sided coin. You have one side where we do, but we can take rest. This side of the coin is already done.
Yeah, which goes back to the previous verses talking about God's sovereignty and we're in his hands, and everything that we do is really what he's doing through us. Yeah.
To still wear a watch, right? And this passage is always, okay, watch and be ready. And I wear a watch, and I remember in college thinking, oh, what a great reminder. I look at my watch to remember to watch and be ready.
Yeah. And it's not, a lot of times when I was young, people kind of drilled into you that idea only in a negative way. You know, watch out, Jesus could come back anytime. You know, you better be careful. It's not that. It's you're wanting to be serving. You're wanting to be doing your duty. Not that you're afraid he's going to catch you doing something, but that you want to be doing what he's given you to do.
But speaking of watches, she has a watch. He has an electronic device with a computer strapped to his wrist.
Count my steps.
That's right. But in Christ, there is no time. So we're eternal beings. And I think we say that. And I think that's what a big part of what he's trying to say there. Is that, he's here.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of,
Out of love, not respect, always.
yeah, it should be a positive thing. Looking forward to him. Yeah.
Yes.
Blessing.
Yeah. And it's not a matter of, well, like the girl with her desk. It's not a matter of, in the hype of today, oh, Jesus is coming, we better get ready. It's that we're always ready. I think of Martin Luther, who was asked, if you knew that Jesus was coming back in the next month, what would you do tomorrow? And Luther replied, I would plant an oak tree. Why would you plant an oak tree? That's what I was going to do tomorrow anyway. So it doesn't matter if you have the right perspective. If your perspective is that of serving God, doing what he's given you to do. And he's given each of us gifts. He's given us things to do. If you don't have something to do, start asking. Ask Brian what you can do, or ask friends. So what do you see my gifting as? What should I be doing?
Excuse me, it compared and showed you step by step all these wedding processes.
Oh, yeah.
And comparing the church to the bride and all of that, and how she was getting ready. And it wasn't like it's her works. She was glad to do it, like John said, in preparation for the rapture. And it was amazing how it compared the Nazarene. But the Nazarene wedding, all the steps in that.
I think they called it a Galilean wedding, if I remember right.
It was amazing. That. It's just very encouraging to watch.
John Gill said, this may be understood either of a readiness to meet the Lord in the way of his judgments, and particularly the destruction of Jerusalem, which was to be in a few years, because that's certainly in the context as well, or of a preparation for death and the last judgment. So that was his perspective, that you could apply this possibly in a couple of different ways. And we're allowing for that without hopefully going too far afield from what Jesus' intention was. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. Any other comments on this section? All right. Excuse me, I'm looking ahead to see whether I think we can do the next section at the time we have without splitting it up. And I know that no matter where we stop, it's kind of splitting things up, but I don't want to stop in the middle of a verse, whatever. So I think we'll wait till next time to move on to verses 41 to 48. Here's a preview. We're looking at instruction concerning waiting, and then next we're going to look at instruction concerning watching, and that'll have to do with reward and so on. So we'll pick that up next time. Tonight, if you haven't been to Life of Christ yet, I would say you can still come in without having missed a lot. We've done a lot of background. We've gotten into some of the scriptures, but we're still. I think we talked about we talked about the birth of Christ last time, so we're in that general area. I think we're going to talk about Herod tonight. Who was Herod that was trying to kill Jesus? Who was he? Where did he come from? How did he get there? How did he get to be king? All that good stuff, and that goes back into the history of Israel between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so we're going to spend some time looking at what happened during that time period that greatly affected what was occurring at the time Jesus was born, and helps give us a greater understanding of why Herod did what he did, who he was, and all that good stuff. So come out tonight and take a part in the life of Christ, our harmony of the Gospels. All right, any other comments, questions? Okay, just spend some time talking with one another until time for church fellowship.
Let's define one.
Yeah, it's